how did you, did he discover you or did you discover him?
Yeah, so I mean, I've told this story a few times, but I don't think it ever gets old. So we actually had another great lifter and bodybuilder, Stan Efferting. He came down for a seminar. We have a mutual friend in Mark Bell, and I think Stan was kind of in the area. He was looking to do some clinics at the time. So this was a little bit over 4 years ago. We were actually a couple of doors down. We had a little bit of a smaller space. It's a little over 4 years ago. So, it's kind of a little bit more in the early stages of my actual business career in the gym. And, we had a great seminar, and it was kind of funny. I remember I was prepping for I was competing, I was prepping for a deadlift only meet at the time. And I remember after the seminar, Stan had to be like, well, who wants to lift? And it's one of those things where you get, Stan at the time was an all-time record holder, great, bodybuilder, all this stuff. I'm like, when am I gonna get a chance to lift with Stan again? So of course, and it was funny because this workout would have been my third deadlift session of the week. So I'm just like, let's just have some fun, see what happens, right? So I'm warming up, whatever, and I hit 600. I hit actually a small personal record for myself of 660. It moved really good. And so I went up to 700, and this was actually the first and only time I personally pulled 700 pounds. It was a great milestone for me. It took me over 10 years to do. And I remember this kid at the time, this kid was Larry, 19 years old. He walks in, he's got a little curly hair, big kid. And we've kind of heard about him. He's just kind of coming on the scene. I think he maybe done maybe he did one powerlifting meet. And I remember he just picked up 700 pounds, and he does it for a triple. So 3 reps at 19 years old. And I'm just like, what am I, this is something that I worked for 10 years of my life, busted my butt for, and I'm just like, I didn't really know what to think of it. I'd never seen anything like this before. And to make things better, Stan, of course, so Stan's coming off his world records and stuff, and so Stan has to, be the big dog, and so Stan goes, does his little yelps, yep. 1, 2, 3, does one more, does 4, just to show the kid up, show the kid who's boss, this has happened a couple of times before. We actually had Stan here. Stan and Larry had a little squat battle. We did a little workout with him a couple of years ago as well. And, Stan's been definitely a great mentor to both of us, and we've learned a lot about diet and things from him. But that was the first time we met, and Larry was actually dating one of the girls that I was working with at the time. Larry had never had any coaching or anything like that. So he started coming to the gym, and we were pretty hands-on for the first year. And I remember, and still to this day, he's such a good athlete that I would show him how to do something, and he would do it better than I showed him. Just for he would just pick things up very quickly. And I think that's just, some people just have that natural athleticism. He could just kind of figure his body out very quickly, and he takes direction really well. As far as with movements and things like that, I can show him a little tweak, and his body kind of figures it out. But in the beginning, especially the first 2 years, kind of working with him on and off, he wasn't as trusting. He wasn't listening as much. He was bombing out of some meets. And then, as years progressed, he kind of got fed up. He was having some knee issues, and he's just like, I'm ready. He was kind of ready. He made some mistakes, and he kind of was like, I need some help to do this, And he was kind of fizzling out. I know some people thought he was going to be washed up and stuff. I remember he got an invite to Boss of Bosses a couple of years ago, and he had not done a full meet in quite some time because he was having some knee issues with his squat. So I said, hey, Larry, why don't you we're going to have a meet here. This was maybe a little over 2 years ago or so. Why don't you just do a little tune-up meet? Let's get some confidence back. Let's build some momentum. No pressure. Let's do a local meet. Let's not even really push it too much. And this was actually the first meet. Larry ended up totaling over 2,000 pounds, which is a very elite number still to this day. He totaled 2,035. I know when he was starting as a teenager, he was still in the neighborhood of 1,900 pounds, which is still an unbelievable mark. But to do that as a teenager is really unheard of. So he had crossed that 2,000 mark, and that really was the spark that I think really kind of gave him the mental confidence to hit these world. He always had the ability. And one of the things I learned, and we were talking a little bit before we started rolling, we really tried to focus more on his longevity, and that's been a big thing. Not so focused on just the next meet or today, what's going to be the best for him long term. And one of the things I realized, I knew he had capabilities of being a world record holder and being one of the best ever. And I started treating him way too different, and I was trying to speed up the process a little bit too much because I knew his potential, and I think I was putting too much pressure on him. And then I realized, like, this is a 19-year-old kid I'm working with. And I started treating him like any other 19-year-old kid, and we focused more on the process versus the end result, and we just focused on being a little bit better each time. And that really kind of led to all these, like, this positive momentum moving forward. We kind of took the pressure off. I just treated him like a 19, 20-year-old kid. And it's just kind of funny, like, how things kind of started to kind of just naturally, like, happen. Because he always had the potential inside him, but we needed to make sure that the mental side, you could have all this physical ability, but if you don't have it, like, upstairs, if you don't have it in between your ears, it doesn't matter.
His youth.
Yeah.
Is that an advantage or a disadvantage?
Sure. Cool. Yeah, so I think the being young is a double-edged sword. Because you can get away with a lot when you're young. You can get away with a lot. Your recovery is going to be a lot better. Sometimes you can get away with things like, for example, like using bad form on a lift, kind of rounding your back too much, kind of yanking the bar when you deadlift, maybe kind of bouncing too much with a squat, putting pressure on your knees. And a lot of these things, are mechanical wear and tear, so your muscles might be able to support it, but your joints, if your joints are starting to wear out, they're going to wear out. I know, like, for myself, I'm 12 years into the sport, and there's, like, things that I can, there's different training modifications that I have to do for myself in order to kind of accumulate some more volume and frequency to my lifts. One of the big things right now, and I'm sure you've seen it, people have seen in fitness, the pendulum always swings one way or the other. Right now, the pendulum has swung toward volume, frequency, and things like that. When Westside was really popular, it was a little bit more intensity based and things like that. So the pendulum has swung so far to this kind of volume frequency range. And if you're young, maybe you could handle it now, but is that going to be sustainable long term? So a lot of times when people see, like, what Larry's frequency is pretty low, but he's using such incredible poundages. So actually prioritizing more rest and recovery for longevity has been, like, a huge thing. And just because you can doesn't mean you should. We're, like, a little bit more of a proponent of, like, the least effective minimal dose. Like, what's, like, the least I can do to continue to make progress? Because that's going to produce a less wear and tear on your joints. And some of the things that we're going to be working on with Larry in this off season, we want to focus on unloading his spine, actually getting away from the barbell from a little bit, just unload the spine, because you're under that compression all the time. So doing some things maybe traction the spine and kind of unload it and still give you a good muscular stimulus. So a lot of times when we're doing exercises, especially later away from the meet, you could have a little bit more variety, and you could do things that create a great muscular stimulus, but actually just you don't need to use as much load. So figuring out some exercises, variations that are a little bit harder where you actually can't use as much load. So if you think about someone like Larry, his last contest, he pulled a 400 kilo over 880 pound deadlift. So we want to think about ways that, what are some variations in some lifts, like maybe pausing at the knees or maybe a deficit? What are some things that we could do to actually make him use less weight, but still give him a great muscular stimulus, to give his spine a little bit of a break, but still stimulate his muscles to grow and get stronger? So that's been, like, a big thing for us with not just Larry, but all our athletes, to kind of keep them healthy.
That's what I was going to ask you. Have you seen, in your personal experience, athletes who have not adhered to that in their youth and the effects of that in later life?
Yeah, so I think a lot of times, I think you see this probably most often with, like, super heavyweight powerlifters. Like, they'll kind of come and go just for health reasons. So one of the things, another kind of thing that we try to preach, and there's going to be a time and a place to, like, let's say, add body weights. Another good example. If you just, mass moves mass, and if you want to kind of take a shortcut to improve your total, I'm a great example of this. At 18 years old, I competed in the 198 class. I ballooned all the way up to 340. Okay, now I'm sitting here at 250. So about actually 2 years ago, I had squatted 900 pounds in competition as a super heavyweight lifter. I could barely sleep. I could barely tie my shoes. I was not in good health. And I actually couldn't even finish that contest. I missed all my benches. And even though I had this great squat, I wasn't even in good enough shape to finish the meet. So I ended up I've lost about, like, 90 pounds since then. I'm a lot healthier, and my strength has taken a little bit of a hit. So if I was a little more patient gaining muscle and not just putting on extra body fat, I probably would be better off and be stronger than I am now. So now I'm having to take a step back in order to take 2 steps forward. So right now I'm kind of dropping that body fat. So I think, especially some of the things that Larry's doing with using the bodybuilding and the powerlifting together, having him be a little bit leaner, taking some time to unload his spine, taking some time to actually keep his weight a little bit lower, I think is actually going to make him have more longevity in the long run than just the powerlifter that's constantly trying to force feed, trying to gain weight for the sake of just gaining weight. You see this all the time. People kind of plateau and they want to kind of take that shortcut. They want to eat more. They want to just put on weight for this. And if you look at someone, like we have some legends on the wall, like we have Eddie Cohen over here. He started I think in the 165s and he gained weight very, very slowly over time. So I think a lot of us, I know with myself, I started competing in the 198s. I did several meets in the 198s and I kind of plateaued for a little bit. And then the next meet I went 220. And then the next meet I went 242. And then the next meet I missed weight for 275. So I went right to 308. And I got stronger, but there was a point where I got so fat that my deadlift didn't go up for 2 years because my leverages actually started to get worse for the deadlift. And I actually gained weight way too fast. And once you have that weight on, as you get older, it gets hard to take off. So if you kind of can stay leaner and just add muscle slowly over time, I think that's just a great word of advice. Just kind of pump the brakes, stay in your lane. With social media and everything, it can be very, very easy to be you start comparing yourself to others, but as long as you're making some progress slowly over time, and if you're consistent, one of the biggest things I learned from Stan is that he said that there's really no secrets. This was the start of his seminar when we first met Larry. It's about consistency and intensity. You need consistency in the long haul. You need to be intense in the moment, but you need to be able to do this it needs to be sustainable. And I think one of the things that we really, I've kind of learned over the years, it really takes a decade to really be great at something. That's something I've kind of learned. I feel like I'm just getting started. Like I said, I'm a dozen years into coaching and lifting. I've been in business for 7 years, so I feel like in another 3 years I might kind of get a little bit better handle on the gym stuff, and I'm still learning. And so a lot of people they're a month in, they're 6 months in, a year in, they feel like they're experts, but there's really so much more to learn and just so much more experience to be gained. So I think learning to have patience. So you're aggressive in the moment, you work hard for that day, but having patience in the long haul, I think is really something that we could all learn, and you can apply that to all areas of your life. It's going to really serve you well.
Absolutely. It's funny because I was going to ask you, and you already sort of gave the answer, and it was exactly the opposite of what I thought it was going to be. I was going to ask you if you thought that the bodybuilding and the powerlifting were fighting each other.
Yeah.
To try to do both was a mistake, and you're saying you think it's the best thing for him.
Yeah, well, so if you look at a lot of these great Russian lifters, sometimes Andrei Milanichev is a great example. Some of these other Russian lifters, Klokov's a weightlifter. They'll so. Not to have too many fancy terms and stuff, we'll talk about in the literature GPP, general physical preparedness. So that's something that's going to be not really related. So general fitness, that's going to be not really related to our sport. So in the sport of powerlifting, the closest thing to special strength and really specific strength would be a 1 rep max in the bench, the squat, and the deadlift. That's the sport of powerlifting for 3 lifts, okay? If you do a 5 rep max and 8 rep max, it's still related, but it's starting to because the intensity is not the same, okay? So it's similar, so it's gonna have a pretty good transfer, we call that dynamic correspondence, okay? So for example, a squat for a basketball player is not gonna have as much dynamic correspondence as a vertical jump because the intensity, the duration, the velocity is gonna be a little bit different, even though it's a similar kind of motion than a jumping would. Hopefully that makes sense for people listening. So when you're actually, after a really heavy contest, a lot of these Russian lifters, they might do swimming, they might do other sports, they might do other things that are just really far away from their sport. It also gives them a mental break. It gives their body a physical break, keeps things fresh. And if you can kind of build a little bit more of an aerobic base and just more general fitness, it's going to allow you to have a higher base of your pyramid. It's going to allow the body to handle more work, handle more volume, handle more frequency, like we talked about. If you're always doing the same things over and over, marathon runners is a great example. Think about how many repetitions that you have, and jogging and running is I think one of the highest incidents of injury that we have in this country. It's very low impact. You'd think everyone talks about running, walking is safe, but since it's a repetitive motion over time, I know a lot of strength coaches will kind of joke that jogging is speed limping, because you really can't do it with good mechanics. If you're doing a 10-mile run, there's so many repetitions, it's really hard to keep good mechanics for that long. So you're better off doing more quality than quantity, and I think that's really the case for powerlifting when you're really trying to, even though these barbell movements are simple, when you get to an 800-pound squat, 800-pound deadlift, 500 or 600-pound bench, being off a little bit has a much bigger consequence than if you're just doing a 45-pound empty bar or a 100-pound like barbell. So depending, I think if the bodybuilding for Larry is placed strategically, so one of the things we talked about is maybe potentially, we're working the kinks out. This is not set in stone. Maybe possibly doing a tune-up meet just so he gets platform experience. So we were practicing the skill of lifting without being at maximum intensity. So there's some value in actually just practicing the sport itself at lower intensities, just like football players would practice drills. They're not like doing, whatever they call it, Oklahoma drills, smashing each other's, necks in, right? Because they're not going to be ready for the game. But you want to
talk about going in to do a meet and not trying to win.
Yes.
I think he can do that.
Well, he's been good at listening to me, but basically holding back a little bit and actually just learning, because I don't want to say my fear, but just in general, if you think about, let's say he just waits till next year to do the US Open again. That's a year without being on the platform. That's a year without getting commands. It's a year without lifting in front of a crowd. There's a skill, even though it's not going to be as much skillful as football, basketball, some of these other sports, there is still a skill component to lifting, the pacing of it, the timing of it. It's the comfort of lifting in your own gym. There's a lot of other factors you need to get comfortable with. So, and especially when you get onto a big stage, things, you're 10 feet in the air, the platform might be a little wobbly. There's other things that are out of your control, and you're not gonna have your favorite playlists playing, all these little things, they start to add up, right? So you wanna kind of put yourself in situations to actually practice your sport. So my kind of goal with him, if we could get what I would call a tune-up meet, essentially it's a practice meet. It'd be a lower priority meet, and our high priority meet, we're gonna really hit the gas on the training. So we're not gonna really be worried about peaking him. We're just gonna kind of go in and maybe do what we can, stay healthy. It's more of like a practice, okay? Then do a bodybuilding show, and then kind of go in and kind of alternate like that. And that's kind of gonna be our plans kind of moving forward. And if we can because again, for him to achieve a high level, he's approaching a 900-pound, deadlifting competition. He's approaching over 850 squat. He's over his bench is very elite as it is. It takes a lot of training just to maintain that level of strength. So for him we're at a point where probably going to only really try to truly peak him maybe once, maybe twice per year. And then the rest is going to have to be off-season training. It's going to have to be bodybuilding training. We're going to have to unload the spine. Because if you think about if you just even 90%, right? 90% of his lift is still a tremendous amount of weight and load and compressive forces on the spine. In the deadlift, shear forces on the spine. So these are on a bench, his light days might be 400 or 500 pounds on a bench. If you think about in your shoulder is a small joint. So, these are things to consider as you get stronger. Again, your muscles might be able to handle the abuse, but it's still wear and tear in your joints. I know Ed Cohen we talked about him before. He kind of believes you only have so many kind of limit lifts in your lifespan, grinding lifts. You want to kind of use them when it counts. So you could use them in the gym, you could use them at the local meet, but you're probably better off using them for those high priority meets when there's money on the line, when there's world records on the line, and when you're really trying to go for broke. Because a lot of people kind of, like I said, it's good for a little video for social media for the day, but you want to use those lifts strategically. So are you prepping for a meet? Is it in a meet? Are you going for a record? What's the intent? What's the intent of the day? What's the goal? And again, we talked about Mark Bell before. It's a great quote. How does this help? How does this hurt? That's something we try to tell our guys and our girls, how does this help? How does it hurt? If you can answer those questions, the kind of decisions become a little bit more clear on if you should do it or not, weighing the pros and the cons, weighing everything as a cost and benefit game. And you have to ask yourself, is the juice worth the squeeze, so to speak? So
leading up to this last meet, he had a string of PRs.
Yeah.
Is that normal for someone his age? And did you see it going to his head that maybe he was just trying to get more PRs? Or
Yeah.
What's going on with all of it?
Sure. So there was a couple of instances. So one thing that's a little tough with Larry is we do live close, but we're not so close, and he doesn't drive. So we train together as much as possible. We do try to train together more leading up to the meet. When I'm with him, if I'm holding his hand and I'm there, he's perfect. He listens, he executes. I also know it's working with him for 4 years. I kind of know where he's breaking down. I kind of know where his limits are. I've been again, not to toot my own horn, but you could probably, if you watch the videos and some of his meets, I've been very good at picking his numbers, and it's been very successful. He's got 2 world records in 2 weight classes. He's doing exceptional. And like I said, I'll never take credit for him. He's got the genetics, he's doing the work. But it's been cool to play a hand in that. It's been cool to, like, the strategy as you climb the ranks, the strategy and your attempt selection can make a huge difference. Because if you miss a lift, if you hit a bad squat, it's going to set the tone for the rest of the meet. And it's also going to mess with his head. So I think the strategy becomes more important as we go. But basically, going back to your original question, sometimes, because he is getting popular and he does, have some people kind of hyping him up and stuff, sometimes the standard of lifting, so for example, the squat depth, for example, the bench pause in training, for example, his deadlift. People don't realize something like the deadlift. We have these calibrated plates here and we have regular plates in the background. Calibrated plates are thinner, okay, versus a wide 100 or a bumper plate. And what's going to happen is, especially on a deadlift bar, if the plates start to stack further away from the center of mass, further away from the collar of the deadlift bar, it's going to flex more. So the range of motion is actually going to be quite a bit less as you stack the weights out. If the weights are a little bit more centered, it's going to flex less. It's going to be a little bit more range of motion. So if you're lifting 900 pounds and you got to pull it an extra inch or 2, that's a pretty substantial thing. Secondly, if the plates are not calibrated, so these calibrated plates that we have from Rogue here, they're very accurate to like the gram or whatever. So it's super, if it's 45 pounds, it's 45 pounds. Some of these other plates that are 40, like some of these, we actually had to redo our hundreds because one of our hundreds weighed 92 pounds. So let's say you have 200s that are off by that much, that 900 deadlift turns, that turns into 880 very quick. So who knows actually how much that 900 deadlift actually weighed if we actually weighed all those plates. So back in the day when we didn't have calibrated plates, they actually used to weigh out the plates for the world records. And that was like a big thing. And now Powerlifting Watch, they actually only recognize calibrated plates for world records just to make it sure. Because, if let's say like you have 10 45s on each side and they're all off by a pound, you're going to be off substantial. It's like that's not even the same realm anymore. 20, 30 pounds off. I mean, that's a different lift entirely. So there's little things like that could make a difference. So like we talked about. So one of the things we're going to be working on moving forward, holding Larry to a little bit higher standard in training. That way we're not just concerned about the actual number itself, but also making sure no matter where he is, no matter how tight the judging is, that he's going to make sure he gets white lights no matter what. We were having some issues with some of it wasn't just us, everyone was having some issues with like some of the squat depth, like some of the people that were getting red lights, we thought in our view was like an inch or 2 below parallel, but this one judge just kept. And what I try to explain to people, especially with powerlifting judging, let's talk squat depth for a second, because I think this is a very controversial topic, and I think it's important it's easy to judge when you're pausing behind a screen and all this stuff. When you're in a chair, like we are now, you're asked to look at 2 points, and it's really impossible to actually focus on 2 points. You have to focus on one. So you're it's still, when it's a borderline call, it's really your best guess. And I don't know what the answer is, but it's going to be hard. So I like to say squat depth and judging and powerlifting in general, it's like an umpire. Everyone's strike zone is going to be a little different. But you have to cater, as an athlete, as a competitor, you got to cater to how the judging is. It can't be the other way around. So we had to make some adjustments at the US Open. We were a little bit under what we wanted on the squat. We were a little bit under what we wanted on the bench, but everyone else was in the same boat. And that's part of athletics. You play to win. And he still hit a PR total, which is great, even under hard circumstances. So I think we were super proud of how he did, especially under the tight circumstances. It was tough judging. And we're going to expect tough judging at a meet like that when there's such stakes on the line and money on the line. But like I said, that's out of our control. So we need to, as athletes and as coaches, we need to adapt to that. That's part of our job, and that's what we did.
But I was more fantastic answer, and I could use so much of that. But I'm more concerned about the psychology of those PRs.
Yeah.
And so many of them. First of all, is that normal for someone his age?
Sorry, yeah.
No, it's okay. Don't worry about going off tangent. I'll bring you back.
Okay.
That's all good stuff. Don't worry. And now I don't have to ask that question. But yeah, what's happening there, and is there a danger of that getting out of control? I'm talking about before you even get to the meet.
Yeah.
You want to keep hitting.
So sure. This is tough, and this is, I think, very individual. There is a psychological component where it's nice to be able to hit the lifts in the gym, and then you kind of know you've done it, right? So one of the things that as you get more experience and as you get more advanced and as you get older, so using like myself as an example, the meet that I squatted 900 in, I think the heaviest straight weight I did in training was maybe 850. But I did some reverse band work with, I think, over 900. And for those that aren't familiar, the reverse bands kind of help cradle the weights and they unload the weights in the bottom. They help you, but you actually can feel the actual bar weight at the top. So we like to use things like reverse bands and things like a slingshot for overload. So that way, like visually, you've seen that weight on the bar. Visually, you've done that weight. Even though you're getting a little bit of help, you're going through a full range of motion with the weight. Other things like walkouts and stuff and just heavy holds can be good. The reason I like the reverse bands and the slingshot a little bit better is because you're actually going through a full range of motion with those weights. So now, like using myself as an example, like I've had over 900 pounds on my back. So when I get to the meet, I felt it, I've seen it, I've went through the range of motion. So even though I was helped a little bit, my nervous system is ready, psychologically I'm ready, so that's gonna allow me to, so one of the things with the peaking phase, there's two main goals. We wanna overload the nervous system and we wanna drop fatigue. And those kind of things are kind of backwards, right? So like if you overload too much, you're gonna accumulate too much fatigue, right? So we like to recommend for most lifters, and the more of a beginner and the younger you are, you can kind of probably increase the percentage a little bit. But if you stick between 90 to 95% in your peaking phase, and then you could do some overload work with 100, 102, 105% with like the reverse band slingshot type stuff, that we found is a good balance where your nervous system is ready, psychologically you could be ready, but you're actually not beating yourself up too much. And when you get to like I said, Larry's, let's say like we talked about before, if he's off 5% from an 800 pound lift, you know what I mean? That's 40 pounds, 10% to 80. If you're off a little bit, so we're more concerned with him. I really don't want him to miss lifts in training. Success breeds success. We want to build some positive momentum. So if he can hit something heavy but have a little bit in reserve, that would be ideal. Sometimes it's close, sometimes, like I said, and a lot of it depends on the standard too. But in general, I'd rather him hit his lifts in training, and if he could have a little bit in reserve and save the big ones for the meet. It's tough and it takes practice, and when you are that young, you will bounce back quicker. But again, the more limit lifts you kind of do, it gets harder and harder to recover. It gets harder to kind of build that momentum moving forward. You don't want to really kind of feel slow and sluggish and be grinding. If you kind of really smash those lifts, even if they're heavy, and you can hit some small PRs. So we're like big fans of really micro progressing. So even some of our women, for example, let's say if you bench 100 pounds, a 5-pound jump is a substantial difference. So we literally have 1 pound and half-pound plates here. So if we can just hit a little PR and so satisfy that psychological need, like I hit a record, and be happy with that. And like I said, save those big ones for the contest. And I will say with him though, you talked about, is it normal? There's nothing normal about Larry Wheels. There's really nothing normal about him. I mean, he is special, and I think it's funny, when we were at a meet one time and we were, he was sweating out some weight to make weight for the 242 class, and someone thought he was like in the NFL. And he's like, what? They're like, what team do you play for? But I mean, what's good, he is, I think, progressing at a rate that is outstanding. But I think that, I just know that he has so much potential, and he's still learning. He's still getting better. There's still things that he could get better with. But like I said, some people just have that like explosive power, that fast twitch muscle, and you can get faster, you can get better, and some people just like have it. And I think you see this with NFL athletes. You probably, someone like an Usain Bolt comes to mind, that just have this like super athletic, like powerful, like kind of, muscle that it just, some people just have that, and some people are just not, like I'm more of like a naturally kind of slower kind of person. I never was able to move that quickly. And, but that's kind of like whatever hand you're dealt, you got to play your cards the best you can. And I think like with our guidance, Larry has been able to, kind of progress at a very good rate and stay healthy, relatively healthy for the amount of weight he's doing. So when you're hanging with the big boys, every lift counts. And there's going to be a point, sometimes there's going to be a point where you have to, you got to take a risk in order to have, especially when there's like prize money on the line and stuff like that. if you're trying for a really big record. He's, I mean, what Larry did last meet, he had to gain weight to make 308 to have a shot at that record. And the lifts that he was doing, weighing in well under 300 pounds, and he beat some of the best 308 lifters on the planet, weighing in much lighter. I mean, it was a really, really gutsy and impressive performance. He did it without knee wraps. He did it, that's another handicap. I mean, that's like a 50 to 100 pound handicap right there. I mean, it's really remarkable, some of the things he's doing. So I guess to answer your question, I think he's doing the best he can. I think a lot of other people in the situation would probably go overboard even more, but he's learning his body more. I'm keeping him in check, so.
Okay, I was gonna say, but what was your thoughts as that was happening?
I think he could have gone a little, I'll take the 900 pound deadlift, for example. Our plan was should have maybe taken that with a reverse band or gone a little bit less. Now, that's one example. But with the 100-pound plates, with the plates stacked all the way at the ends, it did move pretty well, considering. So I mean, that's the thing. Sometimes it really kind of depends on. There's a lot of little factors like that when you get to those kind of weights. I would have liked his bench, he did over a 600-pound bench in training. I would have liked his pause to be a little longer. But if you had to weigh either one, I'd rather him not miss. And if it's a little bit, but we got to kind of hold him to a little bit more of a standard. And if that means taking a little bit less weight off the bar for next time, I think that these are things that we've talked about. We always reflect after the meet. That's one thing I like to do with all our lifters is what are your big wins? What are things we need to work on? What are your goals moving forward? I try to have them think about it, because what do we do as human beings? We always kind of usually focus on what went wrong, the negative. We try to focus on the positives, what we need to work on, what are your goals moving forward, and then we can make plans. Okay, this went really well, let's keep doing that. These are some mistakes we made. Maybe there were technical calls, or maybe, like I said, in Larry's case, maybe your squats, when you get over 800 pounds, you got to make sure you're getting a little deeper. Just little things like that. But a lot of people don't take time to reflect, and I think that's a really good lesson just in life in general. We can get caught up in this hamster wheel, and we're just doing all the time. But sometimes we need to take a step back and actually be okay, let's assess how I'm doing. Let's reflect a little bit. And also, don't be afraid to celebrate the things you did well, and kind of build on that momentum. So those are some things that we try to do, because I think we could really beat ourselves up and just focus on the negative. But I think there's a balance between let's keep building our strengths, and then we could focus on our weaknesses as well. So
I want to start broad and general first, and you can bring this down to Larry in specific. And there was something you said earlier that I had sort of filed away, which is the mindset of a powerlifter.
Sure.
What makes a good powerlifter? We don't have to write a book on this, but I mean, generally speaking, what makes a good powerlifter, and then see if you can relate that to how Larry fits into that.
Yeah. I think really good lifters, and I think this could really apply to any athlete. I think it's like a switch that you can kind of turn on. And when you hit that chalk bowl, and when you're getting ready to get to that bar, that switch needs to be on. And some people do a really good job of this. I find a lot of the really best lifters are really, really nice. They're really humble. But when they're about to do their set, you better get out of their way. I know this with myself. I can be a complete jerk if I'm getting ready to do a really big squat or something. I kind of joke there can be an explosion or a fire going on. I have no idea what's going on, because I am so tunnel vision. I think it really comes down to focus and intent. And I think you can't have any fear under the bar. You need to focus on execution no matter what the weight is. Because if you have a little inkling of doubt, you're already done. You're done. Some of these guys are getting under 900, 1,000-pound squats. If you're off a little bit, that could be a catastrophic injury, but that cannot be even a thought. One of the things that we talk about, and we try to help our lifters that have an issue with mindset and maybe mental strength, is the use of visualization and the use of positive affirmations. So I will oftentimes, especially when I get to those bigger weights, I will often close my eyes and I will visualize myself setting up. I will visualize myself executing the lift, finishing the lift, being successful in the lift. And you might have some sort of mantra or something positive to say, but you have to, whatever it takes, you need to have what we call like a focus plan. It needs to be some sort of like routine. So I know like something like with Larry the Chalk, like he always kind of claps his hands and stuff. Like he's got in a deadlift, he might do his little stomp. Like everyone's got like a little thing. It's kind of like a basketball player. They do like some weird stuff with the free throws.
Picture two.
It's like they do like these weird things, and it's like that's getting them in the mindset to perform. And everyone's got like a little thing. Like there's no like magic formula for it, but every like lifter. Someone like Kim Walford comes to mind, and she's a great deadlifter. She's kind of digging her toes in. It looks like a little, she's got this little, everyone's got like their little kind of setup. And that has nothing to do with the actual mechanics of the lift at all. But it's getting their head ready to perform. So I think whatever you need to do to actually focus, because I think, especially now, like, we're always so distracted with things. We're always like so stimulated with outside stimulus with phones and things ringing and social media, and we need to learn to turn off and get laser focused. And I think if you could do that, and I think as a lifter, when it's one rep and this maximum weight where everything needs to be kind of firing perfect, I think that focus is key. I think that's probably the most focused thing. So that's as far as I'd say the competition aspect. And then I think in a training sense, understanding what's the intent of the day. Every workout is going to have a specific purpose, or it should. You should know what that purpose is. You should know what your goal is for the day. If the goal is technique, then the weight should reflect that. If the goal is to build a lot of volume and we're building muscle mass right now, the weight should reflect that. If the goal is max effort and I'm testing myself, the weight should reflect that. Because a lot of times, let's say if the program is supposed to be 5 sets of 5, the meathead is going to do 4 warm-ups of 5 and then 1 heavy set of 5. And you're not accomplishing that's just an example, you're not accomplishing the intent of the day. So it comes back down to focus. You need to have that focus day in and day out and understand what's the intent of the day. I need to block out all the noise and I need to focus on what I'm doing. I think when it comes to success in life and everything else, you're better off doing a few things like really well, like just really nail those, get your meat and potatoes in, don't worry about like all the, we can get paralyzed so easily about all this outside stuff, but if you could just focus on that one set, and then rest a little bit, and focus on the next set. But in that moment, I think you have to have that laser focus. And I think if you really watch a lot of these great competitors, it's like they have this energy and this aura, and like you could feel it. You can't really put your finger on it, but it's just like the switch turns on, and they're ready to go. And a lot of times, sometimes you could see if the lifter is going to miss a lift or not. Like, are they doing something different? Do they need to kind of trick them? Do they need to talk themselves into the lift? Like sometimes they'll get a little bit more fired up than normal. If you ever watch a really, really good skilled lifter, opener is the same, second's the same, third is the same. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the weight is. Everything is the same. It's just like a free throw. So I think that'd probably be the most, what separates like the elite versus like your intermediate and like pretty good guys. I think it's that focus and that consistency.
You did mention one thing that made me think of something else. You said getting under 1,000 pounds could be catastrophic.
Yes.
Didn't Larry have a tear? Can you tell me what happened there?
So this was last year's U.S. Open. In any sport, there's going to be a risk. There's going to be risk, right? One of the things that I'd like to kind of go out and publicly say, and I don't know the answer, but I think there has to be some better protocols for safety, especially in the squat. Some people may argue with this. So a lot of one of the big arguments in the sport is the monolift versus stands, and the stands are becoming more popular, which is fine. A lot of people believe that the walkout is part of the lift, which is fine. I prefer to have my feet glued to the floor, personally. You can definitely squat more out of a monolift. Now let's just take the performance end out of it. And let's say walkout's part of the lift, which is fine. That's up for debate, but let's just say the walkout's part of the lift. I still do believe the monolift is a safer apparatus because you have the ability for safety chains. Again, people may argue. So in Larry's case, he missed in the bottom of a squat, the spotter did not grab him, okay? If the safety straps are set up, it will catch the bar and it will limit the chance for more injury after the initial injury. Brandon Lilly comes to mind. Again, I don't want to speak for Brandon, but Brandon Lilly, many years ago, he hurt one knee, I think this was at an LA Fit Expo. This is probably over 4 years ago. So again, I don't want to speak for Brandon, but I'm just using his injury as an example because I think it's a good one. He hurt one knee, but then he fell backwards. So knees hit the floor and went backwards. He tore both quads, hurt both knees. So I can't prove this, but it would be my belief that if safety chains were there, one knee would have been hurt, not both quads, both knees, for example. So that's just like one quick thing. So what ended up happening, since the meet is out of stands, and I understand it's better for the viewers, it's easier to set up, there's a lot of benefits to the stands, but I do think there needs to be, because there's going to be human error in every spot. When I was at USAPL Nationals coaching last year as well, Ray Williams missed his third attempt. The spotters could not pick it up. So the way the stands are, they were able to get it into the bench hook, which is the lower hook. Luckily, because Ray missed very, very high up, but God forbid if he missed low, what would have happened there with over 1,000 pounds? I don't know. And Ray is a great, Ray has been here. He's awesome. He's a great dude. And I would just hate to see him get hurt because of like a spotting mistake or something like that. Now, luckily he doesn't miss too often. He's a great lifter, but another example. And luckily they were able to at least get it into the lower hooks. But again, if he missed lower, who knows what would have happened, right? Because they were not strong, the spotters were not strong enough. You got to be in sync. And a lot of times those spotters, maybe they haven't worked together before. You need to be in sync with the person crossing you. We've spotted and loaded, we've picked up, 1,000 pounds. I've actually missed 1,000 pound geared squat here, and luckily I'm still here. So, but I do think, but anyway, going back to your original question, I just wanted to kind of say that there's going to be some risk. He did come down, he did tear something. And we elected to pull him out from the meet, again, to live a fight another day. And not, would he have been able to finish? Maybe. But again, pushing off with leg drive on the bench, the deadlift still involves some legs. It wasn't worth the risk at that point.
It must have been very frustrating for him.
It's very frustrating, and he also had a great training cycle leading up to that contest. And I do think, it's my belief, again, the standard was at the US Opens very high, and I just think he went a little bit too low, and he just kind of collapsed in the bottom. And he ended up having to, again, if you watch the video, very athletically, kind of like side lunge, sidestepped away, because it could have been a lot worse. And like I said, luckily, which again, to me, is really a testament to Larry's maturity and patience and everything else. The next meet, Larry rehabbed his leg, and the next meet he squatted 810, which I wasn't sure if he was going to be able to do. But I mean, man, he was very diligent with his rehab and his off-season training, and I think that also, the fact that we did pull him out from the meet, we didn't try and push it. I think that also allowed him to, because there are some of the lifters that would probably, there's a lot of money on the line. You have the angel and the devil like talking to you, And again, in that moment, you work so hard for this one meet, but the reality is there's always another meet. And you could always, again, maybe barring when you get older and stuff, there's going to be a time where you maybe need to hang up your singlet, but I think that was the right call. I think it just, a lot of this stuff is, you really need to listen to your body. And I think, again, having a coach and having training partners that really care about you, like for me, Larry's health always comes before anything else that we do here. I will never force him into doing something. We really try to preach that as much as, he's as high a level as it gets, but he's still a human being. And I think it's really important that we understand that these lifters and everything, their health should be a concern, and safety of the lifters should be a concern. So that's just something I try to, because we get so caught up with the numbers and the performance, but there's also, like I said, there are risks and there are consequences. So I think it's important that we are aware of those and we try to mitigate those and do things to keep our athletes as healthy as possible. When it's game day, sometimes at that level, elite athletics is not healthy. And I don't want to, it's not. There's nothing healthy about elite, top level football, anything, but we want to try to make them as safe as possible. And I think, Larry's done a good job of kind of listening to his body and kind of, progressing in a sound way and after their injury. So, but yeah.
You might not want to say yes or no on this, but do you think Larry could be one of the great lifters?
Yeah, I mean, I think I thought that the day he walked in through our doors, because, I mean, like I said, at that time, I guess I was still involved in powerlifting for over, 8 years. You just don't see like teenagers doing that kind of stuff. You don't see, I mean, maybe now you do a little bit as the sport's grown, but I mean, especially like at that time, you don't see a lot of guys that his size benching over 600. You don't see a lot of people. How many people can you think of that can do 868? I can't think of any. It's like this. I mean, you get especially knee sleeves. It's like, how many people can do that and do a bodybuilding? I mean, there's this like, but again, going back to what I was talking about before, I think that, and I'll give credit where credit's due. Chad Smith's another great coach, great lifter. He always talks about being more process oriented. And I actually had asked him at a seminar because I was starting to work with some more high level people. And it's, as a coach, sometimes when you start to work with some more high level people, you kind of like second guess, like, do I need to do something special with them or whatever? But like, what is the process of getting Larry 5 more pounds on the squat, 5 more? And if you could just think about that, because everyone could probably think, yeah, I can get 5 pounds better, right? Like that's manageable. So if you could just focus on the process of just improving your total by like 15 pounds or something like that, something kind of manageable, then the task doesn't seem as daunting anymore. And I think when I started to, like I said, again, treat Larry a little bit more like everybody else, and again, it sounds counterintuitive, treat him a little bit more like everyone else, treat him like a person, treat him like a junior lifter, which he is. His potential is it's just going to happen like that. It's going to run its course, and we're not trying to force anything. But I do believe he has another world record in its sights, and I mean, having 2 world records at the same time, it puts him in a very elite category already. 3. I mean, that is a very, very short elite list of people, and he is well on his way to be among some of the greats. So I do think if we could focus on his longevity, really do think he'll go down in the history books, and I think he'll be remembered, like I said, like some of the great legends like we are today. And I think he could do a lot of good for the sport, like we were talking about before we started rolling, like with his aesthetics, being involved in bodybuilding. I think it's going to really help the sport grow and just get more people. We were talking about before, like we have some like teenage athletes that know who he is, and they're excited to lift because of someone like Larry Wheels. And I think like that is a really cool thing.
I'm going to stop you because you said it better off camera before.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to put your words back in your mouth, where you said that you're, how did you say it? You've got 2 audiences now, and
yes.
they're going to each experience something that they haven't experienced before.
Sure.
Can you just try to
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I think one of the biggest benefits of Larry doing powerlifting and bodybuilding is now we're exposed to 2 completely different audiences. There's 2 different types of people. We even have like kids here, teenage like athletes, high school throwers and stuff that know who Larry is, and they're excited to lift. We're getting more people involved. We're getting more people with a barbell in their hands at an earlier age. And a lot of these younger athletes and the younger people look up to someone like Larry. And maybe it's just the physique that gets him in the door in like this realm, and maybe it's him lifting that 900 pounds in the gym. Whatever the case may be, he's getting more eyeballs on him, and it's going to allow both sports to grow a little bit more and get more people involved in strength athletics and strength sports and just strength training in general. I think we're even getting more now, since powerlifting has been more popular. We're getting like women in their 50s and 60s that are understanding the benefits of strength training. My own 60-year-old mother has been training with us. Her bone density is way up, and like that's like super amazing for me. And I think that's really what it's all about. Like one of the things our podcast, and one of the things is called Powerlifting for the People, because we really do believe that strength is something that everyone can achieve, and everyone possesses the ability to get stronger. And being stronger is always going to help no matter what you do, from your bone density to the quality of your life. So you can take it to an extreme level like Larry and be really competitive, but it could also be something that just helps your general health and well-being and lifestyle. And that's one of the reasons that we're like so passionate about helping people and coaching, and because we really do think it could really help so many aspects of your life.
So do you or have you trained bodybuilders? Is that what you're doing with him, or are you just working on his mechanics?
Sure. Short answer, no. That's not my thing. I respect it, I love it, but admittedly, like even I'm learning. I've been learning a lot more just for myself. Like I said, being dropping about 90 pounds all the time, and I've been definitely paying attention to more nutrition. I've also learned that in athletics and performance, I think we're starting to like learn that nutrition plays a much bigger role, and I think a lot of like the everyday people and athletes can actually learn a lot from bodybuilders. Improving your body composition is going to be something that helps all different sports, and every sport's going to have a different kind of range of what body fat's going to allow them to have the best performance, and just for like obviously general health and things like that. So with Larry, my focus is really prepping him for all his powerlifting contests, and even when he's doing his bodybuilding prep, I'm just kind of there for them for support. If he needs something, if something's bugging him, I support him, in every aspect of his life as much as I can. So as much as I would say like I'm his powerlifting coach, I just try to coach him and just mentor him in all areas of his life and just try to guide him, because as things progress, he's getting more popular and stuff, he's getting more opportunities and things. I just try to be there for him, just if he needs advice, if he needs, because as I think as everyone knows, like what goes on in your personal life can absolutely affect your performance, absolutely affect your lifting. If you're depressed or if things are kind of in disarray in your personal life, that's gonna be in the back of your head when you're training, and that's not gonna really make you successful. So making sure that he's happy and fulfilled in all areas of his life and kind of provide him opportunities. One of the things that we've been trying to have him do here, even if it's like once or twice a year, we'll do seminars and stuff, so I'll have him come and speak. So I want him to like kind of learn like more speaking skills, help him like learn, because we talked about this before, like you could be a great athlete, but it doesn't mean you're a great speaker, it doesn't mean you're a great coach, it doesn't mean you have much to say at all. I think a lot of times even like the best coaches were actually really mediocre athletes that maybe just tried really hard, a lot of times. Or like there's some coaches that maybe weren't even involved in the sport that were really great at what they do. And not to say you could be a great athlete and a great coach, but they don't necessarily have to match up, and one is not related to the other. I use myself as an example. My first meet, I squatted 375 at 198. My best squat ever in a belt is 705 raw, and my best in equipment is 900. So that was like a 10 to 12 year process. How many people actually like do something for 10 years, you know what I mean? So, but that's like when you start to like learn experience and stuff like that. So one of the things that I'm going to be helping Larry with for the next couple of weeks, kind of in preparation, just to kind of work some kinks out. We're going to do some different exercises to kind of unload his spine, but also work on some weak points. One of the things I know that he wanted to bring up his legs, for example. So we're going to do some exercises to kind of help unload his spine and kind of target his like quads and different things to kind of bring up some of his weak points. And I do believe it's kind of interesting. Some of the things that he probably will need to work on as a bodybuilder is going to actually help his squat, because his squat, I know it sounds crazy, his squat, because he's an 800-pound squatter, but his squat's probably his weaker of the three lifts. So actually bringing up his legs for bodybuilding is going to actually go hand in hand with actually improving his weak points for powerlifting as well. So a lot of people don't, it's kind of cool, like, and that's not always going to work out that way, but so we're going to be kind of working on some things and giving him some suggestions as he gets healthier. So I try to be as much in the process as I can, and if anyone's kind of watched his videos on meet day and stuff, I'm always kind of in the corner handing him off, loading his plates and picking his numbers, and it just allows him to be an athlete. And I just try to like kind of take a lot of the guesswork out of it as much as I can, especially on the strength side of things. And like I said, I know I'm not sure who he's working with currently for his next like prep, but like I said, he'll have some other guidance with the diet and nutrition. But I'm always kind of in his corner when it comes to like the strength and the powerlifting and any of that type of off-season stuff for him. So that's kind of my role with him for But yeah, like we talk pretty regularly, and I just try to make sure that he's good and he's feeling good and he's on track, and I'm always there to support him in every way possible.
Last question. Set all of the powerlifting and bodybuilding aside. What's Larry like as a guy, as a person? Let's say I never met him and you're describing him to me.
Sure.
Tell me about this guy.
It's funny, so we kind of mentioned before, like a lot of these great lifters are often the most nice and humble, and you see pictures of Larry, and it's like he's got a very imposing physique, very powerful looking. You could just tell. I mean, But it's funny because he wouldn't hurt a fly. And he's very nice. And when he's like not lifting, I mean, he's into like, you know, interesting things like anime and stuff, and like stuff that you wouldn't even like think of that he'd be into. One of the things I really admire about him the most, I feel like no matter, like he's never, how do I put this? Like when people kind of come up to him, he's always very supportive, and you know, he's just great with, I hate like saying fans and stuff, but people that follow him, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of people that look up to him, and I feel like he's always willing to take a picture. When he's at a local competition, he's cheering people on, like no matter like what they're lifting, and he'll get excited. You know, like one of our, he was at a meet in Jersey last weekend, and one of our other lifters, his name is Nick Wheeler actually, so we call him Nick Wheels. He's like he's the smaller wheels, but still very strong. He hit a 455 bench, a 645 squat, and a 750 deadlift, and he hit PRs in this. And you know, Larry's cheering him on. He was excited for him, and you know, those are great lifts. But again, you know, it's like Larry's been there, done that, but he's still excited. He's still excited to see like some of his friends and training partners like progress and stuff. And I just think that's really cool, because I think sometimes when you get these guys in the middle of the pack, and I've even had lifters that have worked out here and since come and gone because they don't really, you know, it wasn't really a good fit for our community. You know, like some of these middle of the road lifters would maybe kind of talk down or make fun of people for being weak, or it's like, but we were all there at one point. And Larry's never been like that. And I think no matter how strong he gets, he's always excited to see people grow and progress. And he's very supportive. And like I said, that if I could say one great thing about him, I think that's like the biggest thing. And I think that's really cool, especially for people that are, because a lot of people look up to him, and a lot of people like maybe want to get to, you know, be 10% of what he's doing, you know. And he'll never talk down to everyone. He's always really encouraging. And yeah, not everyone is like that, you know. And I think that's one of his best qualities, and one of the things I love, you know, most about him. I think he's just a great advocate for the sport for that reason, because I think I think we need more people like that, just in general, just in life, that are just, we got to be more inclusive versus exclusive. Like, let's come together more, let's love more, let's hate less, let's stop, you know. There are things that we could fix, there's things we could do better, but like, let's like come together. Let's be more collaborative. Instead of just like kind of fighting over like what the 1% that we don't agree with, you know. So I think we need more people like that, and I think that's one of the things that I think he's that I love most about him. So.
Good answer. Great answer.